Hi everyone, welcome back to another Graflex video. For today's video we're going to be looking at this beautiful vintage 3-cell Graflex which I've converted into the A New Hope prop. I have actually done this quite some time ago, but I wasn't happy with some of the parts that I had. There was quite a bit of heavy rust on the slide switch and on the clamp. But I recently acquired a new vintage Graflex, so I was able to upgrade those two parts. I also made a few other modifications, which I'll talk about. So without further ado, we'll start from the top and work our way down as usual. So the whole thing is obviously vintage. Not only is it vintage, it's actually an early former, which I strongly believe to be the model that was used in the A New Hope prop. We could tell it's an early former if we look inside on the bunny ears band. Over here we can see a brass pin. This is not present in later models like the later formers and inks, as far as I know. Please don't quote me on this. I've done a fair bit of research, but again, take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. I'm happy to be corrected. But as far as I know, the brass pin on the inside of the bunny ears band is a tell of the earlier former models. Also, the beer tab rivet tends to be a flat sort of brushed finish on the earlier models and is a little bit more shiny and machined in the later models. So I think this is an early former with the smooth pins, of course. And from the limited reference material that I've seen of the A New Hope prop, it seems to be an early former. The red button is also a vintage early former with thick knurling. The earliest models have a thin knurling, sort of a thin strip of knurling. But that was only used in the A New Hope motorized stunt and in one of the stunt sabers in Empire Strikes Back. So the A New Hope prop has one with a full knurling like that. We don't know if it's early or late former or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but this is an early former. And we can tell it's an early former. If we unscrew it and look from underneath, we see 3 notches right here. 1, 2, 3. The later former ones have, I think, 6 notches, and the inks have a single notch. So early former upper, early former button. Also has an early former glass eye, and this is definitely accurate to A New Hope. The late former glass eyes have a somewhat wider lip, and of course the inks look completely different without this sharp 45-degree incline of the aperture. So this is a typical early former glass eye, and that is correct for A New Hope. The Graflex is in very good condition considering it's almost 100 years old. There are some spots of rust and a few scratch marks here and there, the heaviest being here on the beer tab, but nothing that makes it look, terrible. It's really still quite nice and actually just shows a natural bit of aging and weathered appearance. There's a little bit more rust here on the clamp, especially here over the E, but again, it really does not bother me in the slightest compared to the clamp that I had before. With the clamp, I went with the accurate look for A New Hope, so the lever is raised up, the orientation is so facing the slide switch with the lever pointing up like that, partially closed. I removed the sidebar on this side. I've kept it separate over here, kept it safe, and I got the replica stamped sidebar from Wanawanga. So this is one of the only non-vintage parts on this assembly. I did this because I do not want to make any permanent modifications. So I don't want to stamp the sidebar, just in case I change my mind. It's just too permanent of a change to make. So I just went with a replica. The washer has also been removed, and that is accurate for A New Hope. The washer is over here, the square washer. I've removed that, and that is accurate. You might notice this very large rivet here on the lever. This is not an original part. The original lever rivet is quite a small rounded pin. What you see on top is a custom machined part that I purchased from Ryan at RPK Customs. This is something that he's recently started to offer, and I will put his link in the description because he will be offering those to sell. It's absolutely beautiful. It sits nice and flush and is the correct height and width to the A New Hope prop. We do see this on the A New Hope prop only, and we don't really understand why it looks like that. This is not an accurate look for any of the vintage Graflexes. There are several theories around it, one of which is that it was possibly broken and something was stuck on, like a nail or a pin of some sort was used to secure it, and maybe that could also explain why the lever is partially open in all of the shots. We know that they did use something like that to fix the lever of Darth Vader's lightsaber in A New Hope. Again, the lever was broken, so they used a bent nail to hold it together. So this could be the explanation. But yeah, so this is a custom machine piece which you simply just glue on top of your lever rivet, and gives it the accurate look. So that is custom made, and that is a replica. The bubble strip is a vintage. This is harvested from an Exactra TI-19 or TI-20. I can't remember which. One of those two. Both of them have the same bubble strip, really. And this is the correct kind of orientation. It sits right in between the shoulders of the clamp, so not underneath, but in between. I cut this myself, and to the correct length. It should be very slightly longer than the clamp, and the side should be chamfered like that, so it looks like it's been pinched. So that is also vintage. These grips are Wanawanga grips. We currently don't know where the vintage grips came from. So these are probably the best that we have, the Wanawanga grips. There are 7 of these. They are angled at 30 degrees, and some of them are rounded, some of them are straight. I looked at a lot of reference pictures for the grips and tried to match them as close as possible. So they're uneven lengths, there's uneven spacing between. I did use a grip guide for this from Wanawanga to space them properly, and now I secured them with some E6000. In between the grips you can see some rivets. There are 2 larger rivets here and 2 smaller rivets there. These are all vintage rivets which have been popped, cut down to flush, and then glued on top of the flash, because I dislike drilling holes into a vintage flash. On the bottom you can see the Fulmer non-patent stamping. The clip that holds a D-ring is, you can either get it from Wanawanga, but this is actually a custom piece made from an old sheet of metal that was cut by my friend Martin, with another pair of vintage rivets, and finally a vintage D-ring. This is not 100% accurate to the D-ring that Wonga uses. His is slightly shorter and a little bit more rounded, but the difference is subtle, and I wanted to use as many vintage parts as possible on this build, so I chose to go with this one. So again, vintage D-ring, vintage clip, vintage rivets. All these rivets are vintage. The bubble strip, really everything on this build is made of vintage or real parts, except for the oversized rivet head here, the replica sidebar, which is stamped, and the grips. And those are the only replica parts. And that is it. Graflex A New Hope, hero prop, belt hanger, Luke Skywalker, the very first lightsaber that we see on screen, probably one of the most iconic lightsabers in all of Star Wars, and certainly my favorite version of the Graflexes. So I'm finally happy with the way it looks. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and as always, feel free to like and comment and send me any questions that you like. I'll try to answer as many as I can, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.